Welcome to another episode of The Brand Called You, a podcast and podcast show that brings you leadership lessons, knowledge, experience, and wisdom from thousands of successful individuals from around the world. I'm your host, Ashutosh Garg, and today I'm delighted to welcome a very accomplished professional from New York City, USA, Cecilia Dones. Cecilia, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Thank you. Cecilia is the founder and chief data officer of Three Standard Deviations. So, Cecilia, let's start by asking you, tell me a little bit about your own journey in brief.
Yeah, it's fascinating in the sense that it was completely nonlinear.
Hmm.
So, what has been my North Star in everything I've ever done is to follow my curiosity. And
Hmm.
so, I am a quant researcher, very much interested in telling stories about people using data. And
Mm.
so every opportunity I've had, every success, every failure has been, I'm curious about that. Let me understand that better. Is there something more to that idea that I can explore that helps me understand the human experience?
Mm.
And so the primary utilization of my skills have been mostly in consumer spaces, so marketing and advertising. I would say the second part of my career, I got really excited and wanted to do more with the data, more with the analytics. I'm a trained statistician, so that's the quantitative side. And I kept running into the same problems. My data is over here, my data is over there. I don't have access to my data. Nobody trusts my data. And so I started picking up more and more data skill sets. And so
Mm.
within the last 10 years or so,
Mm.
I've been brought in as executive leaders into organizations who are trying to build these data and analytical capabilities inside of their organization. So I became more of an enterprise data leader. And
Mm.
so worried about marketing, of course, but also worried about finance and operations and supply chain and sales and all of those other functions within an organization. So really building at bigger scales across all touch points inside of an organization where you're
Absolutely.
trying to make decisions. And
Absolutely.
then the last part,
Mm.
I would say my pandemic gift to myself was
Mhm.
to attempt to finish my doctoral dissertation. And I will say, as of a few weeks ago, I passed my orals. And so
Oh,
I'm officially
congratulations.
doctor now. And I've been teaching AI ethics. I have been exploring the applications of AI, generative AI, agentic AI inside of organizations across functions. And it has been a wonderful journey. Still
Fantastic.
trying to figure
Wow.
out why people do the things they do.
I know. Thank you so much. And congratulations, Dr. Cecilia Dones.
Yes.
Wonderful. So, when I was reading about you, I was fascinated to read that you talk about moving businesses from mysticism and
Yes.
magic to mastery.
Yes.
Can you break down what this transition looks like?
hmm so the reason why I say mysticism to mastery is for many organizations, regardless of the maturity of that organization, how much I use AI in my day to day business,
Mm.
it still seems magical. We don't understand what's inside the black box.
Mm.
Somehow I type some things into the machine and something comes out that may be meaningful or may be valuable to my organization.
Mm.
So it feels a little bit like magic. My reasoning for how I want organizations to mature through this process is that, yes, it can feel magical and it can feel exciting and all of those things. However, if we really want to fully utilize and realize the value from our data and analytical practices, we have to master it. And
Mm.
so, what that means is, are we actually utilizing data and analytics and AI to
Mm.
change business outcomes?
Mm.
So it's not enough to say, I did the analysis. It's not enough to say, oh, I put the data here or there. What are you changing in the way you're making decisions inside of your organization such that the outcomes of your business is changed as a result of AI?
Mm.
And so that slight nuance from focusing on outcomes as opposed to output is the distinction I make when you go from mysticism to mastery.
Great response. Thank you. Cecilia, many AI models function as black boxes. How can businesses make AI more explainable and trustworthy for their customers?
I am a big fan, and as I mentioned, I do teach AI
Yeah.
ethics. I'm a big fan of responsible AI.
Mhm.
I nuance that definition a little bit. So, explainable, I think it's great. I think some of the more reasoning models that are more lately coming to date is helpful. However, I think explainability doesn't, it's not sufficient from a consumer standpoint, meaning I can say all of the words. However, if you, as the recipient of that message, doesn't understand me, it doesn't matter that I'm using all the words, all the explainables.
Yep.
No, I press organizations to focus on what is understandable, what
Mm,
is expected from your consumer. And so if you have a consumer that is interested in, I don't know, flavors of cake, that's top of mind at the moment. Um, and you have a machine that's helping you to offer up different variants of cake frostings and cake flavors and all of
yeah.
those things.
Mm,
What would be important for your consumers to understand? Oh, how did the machine decide that chocolate and cherry goes together?
mm,
Oh, maybe that's important to your consumer in
mm,
that context, as opposed to if you were to explain chocolate and cherry in maybe a financial services context, that would be confusing to a consumer. And so I think it's very important for organizations who are trying to remove the opacity around these models and decisioning process is to think of it from the consumer's perspective
mhm,
and what is their expectation in the transaction.
mhm.
If I'm
Well,
buying a cake, maybe you
yeah.
should know about flavors. If I'm trying to open a bank account, maybe you should know about the variable rates on
Mm,
loans and lending. So
well said.
it's really contextually driven.
Very well said. Your work also focuses on how technology mediates the lived experience for individuals and brands. Can you share an example of how this manifests itself in everyday life?
Yes. So it's related to my doctoral research. I was very much interested in understanding nonverbal trust and authenticity signals in technology mediated communications
Mhm.
in virtual environments. And it's a very fancy way of saying, how do we talk to each other? How do we listen to each other when we have the machines helping us to do that, especially
Right,
online? And
right.
an example of that is literally right now, this podcast, this video cast.
Hmm.
We're utilizing technology, we're using the internet, we're using Zoom to be able to connect to each other. In another lifetime, in different times, maybe it would only be through the telephone, or it wouldn't be at all, or maybe only over letters.
Yeah,
It's very different. So, how do we interact now, knowing that we have machines that help us to see? We have machines to help us to hear. We have machines that are helping to translate our language and our communication over many, many miles, many, many
yeah,
distances.
yeah. Well said. And given the rise of deepfakes and synthetic data, how can consumers differentiate between genuine and AI generated interactions?
The short answer, and maybe it's a bleak answer, is
Hmm.
no, we cannot tell.
We cannot.
Uh, um, we are past the point where we are able to meaningfully distinguish it. And of course, there's very extreme cases. So, for example, if you have an image and
Mm,
there's, I don't know, 7 fingers as opposed to 5 fingers, and they're all twisted the wrong way, yes, there's the obvious
yeah,
cases. But in for most AI generated, most average
that's good to
individuals will
tell.
not be able to tell. So what do you do in this case?
Mm,
I would say instead of fixating on is this real or is this not real, I would ask myself, what is the incentive for
mm,
me to believe that this is real?
mm,
If I were the other party, if I were the other person, why would they want me to believe this is real? Do they get any additional benefit that could be at my detriment as a
right.
result of me believing that it's real?
Mm,
And understanding those incentives and motivations can help me critically think through okay, this image or this audio or this text I'm reading, how much do I want to trust it? And I think that's a more pragmatic way
yeah.
of addressing is this real or not? Because at this point, it's very, very difficult to do so. We don't have enough technologies at this moment to really address authentication, especially in these types of environments.
Wow. That is, in one way, a reason for worry for an average user like me, and maybe something to look forward to as well. But Cecilia, you've also written about synthetic data in marketing. How can businesses leverage it without compromising authenticity?
It's very, very difficult. And
Mhm.
there are many use cases for synthetic data, especially in marketing research, in those subdisciplines. My main advice for any organization, and I do advise smaller organizations that are trying to enter this ecosystem, providing services, is that how are you going to determine that the data that it is producing is representative of the data you want it to represent? So is there a truth set? Does it follow the distribution of the underlying data? Are there hidden biases that you're codifying as a result of creating synthetic data models on top of already biased data sets? And so being very cognizant of the potential for misrepresentation is something that I really advocate for anybody who's utilizing it. However, can it help us with imputation? Oh, yes. If there's missing holes in your data, yes, it can be quite helpful. Can it help speed up research? Oh, yes, it can definitely create efficiencies when you're trying to do things at scale. Can it help us with exploratory? So I don't have a lot of resources, but I kind of want a direction for my research to go. Can synthetic data help you? Oh, yes. Is it the final end all be all?
Yeah.
No.
Great response. Thank you. And I must compliment you. You explain these things so easily and simply. I'm sure my viewers and listeners will really love every single comment that you're giving to us. My next question, Cecilia, is with the rise of generative AI, are we moving towards a future where human creativity is augmented or replaced?
I am an optimist when it
Okay.
comes to these things.
Yeah.
I think for any attribute that we would describe as human, so creativity, critical thinking, all of those terms, I would say AI is going to redefine it. It's going to force us to reflect and say, is that really the definition? Is that a meaningful definition today? And so I am firmly of the camp that creativity is going to be augmented, not necessarily replaced.
Thank you. My next question is that how does AI impact decision making at a subconscious level for customers?
So the question, this happens a lot with recommendation
Yeah.
systems in particular, and we've had recommendation systems for a very long time.
Yeah.
And so when we think about things from a subconscious perspective, when I say I like something, or when I say I want a particular product or service, the question I ask myself is, had I not been recommended by the algorithm, if I had heard it from a friend, would I still like this item? Would I still be seeking this service? A book that I'm actually currently reading, it's relatively older, is You May Also Like by Tom Vanderbilt. It explores these ideas of wants and likes. And when it is influenced by algorithms, what does that mean? So, how do we be true to our own wants and likes, knowing that the machines are kind of helping us, suggesting things?
Right. Well said. Many businesses implement AI-driven automation, but customers still value human interaction. How can brands strike the right balance?
Whenever there's a question regarding what do we do for the consumer, I love the question because your thinking, your strategy is in the right place. I always default to the same answer. Oh, let's go ask some consumers. Depending on the sector you're in and depending on the maturity of the relationship you have with your consumer, meaning, is this purely a utilitarian, transactional type of relationship with the consumer, or is it more transcendent, meaning the consumer sees the brand as part of their identity? So in luxury, for example, many consumers will actually identify with the brand. Oh, I am a Prada user. I am a Gucci user. That's why I have this product. As opposed to, I don't know, maybe cereal or milk or other goods, which may be a bit more utilitarian. And so I always say the same thing. You have to ask your consumer what's most appropriate for you. So if you're in a utilitarian category and maybe it's only about replenishment, maybe AI driven automation is excellent because you're on a replenishment cycle. You don't need too much interaction with humans. However, maybe if you're in the luxury sector and you're buying a really, really expensive handbag, you like that personal experience that the concierge knows your name, knows your family's
Right.
background, knows the exact thing you bought last time, your last holiday, all of
Mm,
those things. And so understanding the sector you're in and understanding the mindset of your consumer of what they expect from you will
mhm.
help guide what's appropriate to augment with AI, what's appropriate to replace with AI, and what really should be human to human interaction.
Fascinating. My next question, Cecilia, is how should businesses upskill their workforce to work with AI rather than fear AI?
So culture change is always difficult. So I want to acknowledge that.
Mm,
As leaders, there are a couple of components I think that's critically important for culture. Creating opportunities for psychological safety, because you had mentioned fear. When people are afraid, they stop learning. When
mm,
people are afraid, they start behaving in defensive ways. And
mm,
so that doesn't help at all with trying to create AI adoption. It's
mm.
important to acknowledge it, but as leaders, how do you create the safe space? What I mean by that, are you creating forums where I love this example. I've implemented this a few times in different organizations. Do you have a laboratory where you just play with the tools? And if there's an outcome, great. You have a new potential business idea and you can implement it into your line of business. Excellent. Or maybe not. And it's just about them just learning how to utilize the tool. Are you creating those spaces for people to actually play with the tools? And then everything related to AI. You cannot read it in the textbook. You
Right.
cannot talk about it. It is an
Absolutely.
experiential thing. If
Absolutely.
you want to be an expert, if you want to be skilled, you actually have to play with it.
Amazing. My next question, and you're a data scientist. Do you think that at some stage AI will eventually start to replace a lot of data analysts, or will it simply change their roles? And please excuse me if I'm offending you on this question.
First of all, curiosity. I'm never offended by curiosity.
Okay, thank you.
So thank you. And asking the hard questions, we need to be able to do that. So
Okay.
I appreciate that very much.
Hmm.
Will AI replace data analysts in the form they are today? Yes.
Okay.
And why I say that is that, as I alluded to in the previous question, AI is giving us the mirror to ourselves to reflect upon is are we utilizing the right definitions for creativity? Are we
Right.
utilizing the right job descriptions to describe data analysts?
Hmm.
So, for example, what I believe will happen for data analyst roles is that AI will augment what they do in terms of repetitive tasks. However, where data analysts will become more skilled is the contextual components.
Hmm.
So, really understanding the data generating process
Hmm.
that goes into these data and analytical tools. I
Hmm.
find, especially in many organizations, we do not spend enough time understanding what do these ones and zeros mean? Where did they really come from? What is it supposed to represent?
Yeah.
We just look for the ones and zeros. And
Hmm.
so if machines are dealing with the ones and zeros for us, we can start to say, oh, was that the right measurement tool that
Hmm.
we should have used to collect that data?
Correct.
Oh, wait, we don't really understand the provenance of this data. Oh, maybe we should not trust it. Or maybe we should test it further so we can determine whether we trust it. It's going to redefine the data analyst roles such that they're going to be elevated to do
Right.
more critical
Hmm.
thinking and more creativity with the data. So I get quite excited. In the near term, is there going to be disruption? Yes,
Yeah.
that's always what happens whenever you have exogenous shocks
Hmm.
into an ecosystem. Will a lot of people be displaced? Yes. Will a lot of people feel lost? Yes. Will a lot of people get creative and find new ways to create value? Also, yes.
Yes. What a great response. Thank you. I have time for three more questions for you, Cecilia. My next question is, how can smaller businesses which may lack AI expertise still leverage AI for growth without relying solely on big tech platforms?
I think when you are resource constrained, um, it's exciting in the sense that if you're resource constrained, you get to be a little bit more creative because you have less resources. So maybe smaller players who are trying to enter the ecosystem, you suddenly become very exciting because now you're both trying to grow, and that could be potential opportunities for piloting and innovating things that are very, very new in the
Hmm.
ecosystem.
Hmm.
Um, However, I would say if you are trying to figure out how do I truly embed this, I think you have to be much more mindful about the use cases you choose to pursue. And what I mean by that is, um, what is the core of your business? I always start there. What is your business strategy? And then from there, go to your data strategy, go to your analytical strategy, go to your AI strategy. If your business strategy is not clear, all the technologies in the world will not necessarily help. There will still not be a product market fit. And so I start with the business strategy first. And if we go through that exercise and we determine the data strategies right, the analytical strategies right, and then you need AI, then it could be quite exciting to utilize small players. So it's not to close the door, but you have to be a bit more strategic and mindful of the choices you make, especially when you're resource constrained.
Fascinating. Thank you. If you could change one thing about how businesses currently approach AI, what would it be?
Uh, uh, I would say being more mindful of what's hype. Um, it's exciting, the velocity of change that's occurring from a technological standpoint. So I get it. I get excited too.
Hmm.
However, who are your customers at the end of the day? Are they machines or are they people?
Hmm.
Last time I checked, for many organizations, it's
People.
people.
Yeah.
And so I would always try to ground myself in how am I actually servicing my customer, my consumer? Are they expecting faster, better, stronger, all the things? Before I start thinking about, oh gosh, should I AI this? AI is not a verb. And so I would be very cautious about getting overly excited about just implementing technology when there really isn't a value proposition that's consumer facing. And so I wish organizations would be more mindful of their customers and consumers at the end of the day, and then decide whether or not AI is appropriate for that value delivery that they're trying to bring.
Very well said. And my last question for you, what is one piece of advice you would give to businesses looking to ethically and effectively implement AI in their customer strategy?
I've spoken about this. I've taught this. No matter how many technologies we end up learning how to use, embedding into our business processes, I am a big fan of human in the loop.
Hmm.
If you're facing a customer, if you're facing a consumer and you're trying to build a technology experience for them, make sure humans are in the loop and make sure humans that represent your customers are in the loop. If everyone looks the same,
Correct.
I don't think your customers all look the same. So
Absolutely.
making sure you have that inclusion and accessibility when you're trying to build experiences for consumers, and making sure that people are involved.
Amazing. And on that note, Cecilia, I just want to say thank you so much for speaking to me about your own journey. I think we covered some incredible ground on AI and how AI is increasingly becoming an inherent part of customer strategy. We covered a lot of
Yeah.
very interesting points, and I think I learned many new things from you about customer retention, about customers, and the use of AI. Thank you for speaking to me, and good luck to you.
Thank you so much. This is great.
Thank you. Thank you for listening to the Brand Called You videocast and podcast, a platform that brings you knowledge, experience, and wisdom of hundreds of successful individuals from around the world. Do visit our website www.tbcy.in to watch and listen to the stories of many more individuals. You can also follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Just search for the brand called You.